Welcome to this video of the part 2 discussion of important topics that are very crucial from the perspective of GATE architecture and planning exam and also some other architecture and planning exams attached with this perspective. We had already discussed about a number of important topics and a few of them were left. So that is why this video completes up the most important topics for various examinations that are considered with the idea of architecture and planning. So starting with the very first important topic, which happens to be the Indian tribes and their architecture. As we know that India has a diverse range of tribal communities and there is attached a unique architectural style with each communities. For example, you could find in the exemplar situation of the tribal communities of Northeast India, where bamboo and thatch is known for the architectural understandings or architectural developments, and they definitely built the structures on the stilts. And also the case of tribal communities in central India is there, where they construct their own houses by the usage of mud and stone. And basically, it gives us the understanding of vernacular systems attached to these kinds of various tribal domains. So that is why it becomes very important to learn about the tribal architecture and the vernacular systems attached to these kinds of various tribes. Moving on, the second case here would definitely be the case of thermal theories that are related to the comfort of human body, or basically the theories that helps us to understand the basics of the thermal comfort. Supposingly, some of the elements are very definitive to be learned. For example, mean radiated temperature could be there, or relative humidity could be there. The case of air velocity could be there. Sometimes the calculations of sun radiation, or more importantly, the cloud cover could be there. So these are the various elements that we need to learn about. And only after learning these kinds of theoretical concepts or elements, we would be able to solve the numericals that are attached with the thermal comfort. In our previous video, we have already learned the fact that the numericals are very important from this perspective, the thermal comfort perspective. That is why it is very important again to learn about various theoretical concepts that arrange around the thermal comfort or the theory of thermal comfort. Moving on, we have the case of various architectural styles and their characteristics. Supposedly, for example, we could discuss the case of Gothic architecture, Romanesque architecture, Baroque, Renaissance could be there, modern architecture is there, and postmodern architecture is there. And moreover, most importantly, there will be some sort of characteristic, some sort of pattern, some sort of design parameter that would definitely be attached with these kind of architectural styles. And as far as the idea of GATE architecture and planning exam is concerned, very direct questions have been asked previously, which were based upon the idea of the characteristics and various kinds of architectural styles that have happened over a period of time, and also which enhances our basic understanding of history of architecture. Moving on, we have the case of plumbing and sanitation theory, which is a case of definite understanding of building services, where we need to understand about the water supply systems, which involves treatment, distribution, storage of water, sanitary sewer system of how it is being collected and transported to various places where it is again treated, and also the stormwater drainage systems. And in this very particular discussion, the idea of rainwater harvesting is also considered. And as we have already discussed the case of runoff coefficient that is attached with the rainwater harvesting. So in this very particular case of plumbing and sanitation theory, we need to learn about the basics of rainwater harvesting as a theoretical concepts. Moving on, we have the case of travel demand modeling. This topic is important from the perspective of transportation planning, where the case of trip generation, trip distribution, mode choice, and trip assignment is understood. First of all, we are going to understand theoretically about these topics, and also there are various stages of distribution or generation of various kinds of trips. That is why it is very important to learn of how the travel demand is modeled, how the trips are assigned to different destinations, how the mode of transport is determined, and what are the various calculations considered under these many modeling criterias. Moving on, again under the concept of transportation planning, the basics of road design, or to learn about the basics of road design is very important, where we get to know about the geometrics of the road design, which considers the design of road alignment or cross sections or vertical profiles. Then also there are cases of pavement design, where we design flexible and rigid pavements. And some sort of theoretical concept of traffic engineering is there, where the concept of signals, markings, and signs are learned. We need to understand these topics from a very theoretical perspective, so that we are able to at least know of what happens within the domain of highway engineering or road design, from the perspective of overall domain of the transportation planning. Moving on from the perspective of urban and regional planning, there is this case of land use classification on GIS, or Geographic Information System, which basically is the full form of the GIS. This is one of the most efficient software which is used in the overall calculation, or in a way determination of the land use particularly, and land cover. We basically need to understand the difference between the land use and the land cover, and to learn about the basics of the land use and land cover via the calculation of the GIS has been seen, um, asked in the various examination of how the various kinds of classification based on the GIS could be done. There are cases of maximum likelihood classification, and then supervised classification could be there, unsupervised classification could be there. So there are numerous ways via which these kinds of classification of residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, recreational, or green space would be there. These are the kinds of land uses, and basically there is also concept. There is a other concept called as the land cover. So we need to learn about the differences between these two kinds of concepts, and also the application of GIS attached to them. Then we have the case of important idea of sun path diagram and the angles attached to it, which is a diagram that shows the position of sun in the sky at different times of the year, and there are various angles such as altitude angle and azimuthal angle, which are attached to the overall study of the sun, or the rays that are uh, coming towards the earth. So we need to identify of what kind of angles these are, so that we are able to do the calculations while supposedly designing any shading device, or planning the orientation of the building, because these happen to be the most important aspects or parameters while we plan our buildings or design our buildings, because these tend to help us take better decision in terms of the overall design of skin of the building, and also the site planning of the building. Moving on, there is this important case of hierarchy of roads, which helps us to know about how the roads are classified based on their importance and function. Supposedly, the case of expressway would be there, national highways would be there, state highways, then major district roads, and then minor district road. Then the case of village road could be there, and there is something called as arterial roads, or sub-arterial roads, or collector roads. So we need to learn about these kinds of various roads that come under the overall hierarchy of the road design or road structure. Then importantly, we have the case of Ramsar list, which again is very important from the perspective of heritage, or the wetlands that have been conserved for the various importance or for the sake of international importance. So there are various number of wetlands that have been conserved or have been taken care of out of its international importance, and these wetlands are then designated under the Ramsar Convention. So that is why we need to learn about the names of various wetlands that have been there in the list of Ramsar. Then we have the case of stages of project management, because the theoretical concept of the project management is very crucial to be learned from the perspective of various architecture and planning examinations, where how the project is initiated, how the overall planning is done, how a detailed project plan is prepared, how it is executed, and how it is carried out with the project activities, how come the project is monitored and controlled, and how come importantly the project is completed, and also the evaluation of its performance is done. Moving on, we have the case of vernacular architecture and states attached to it. Previously we learned about the tribal architecture and the various kinds of styles attached to it. Now, the case is the availability of vernacular architecture as per the different states of India. Supposedly, the vernacular or traditional architectural style of the state of Kerala would be different from that of the case of Rajasthan, and in comparison to that, the idea of Himachal Pradesh would definitely be totally different. So we need to really learn about the various vernacular architectural styles that are associated with various kinds of states. Supposingly for the case of Himachal Pradesh or the areas in the Himalayan region in the northern India, the important example of Kathpuni style is there. And in Rajasthan, we have the case of Havelis that are being built on the concepts of courtyard planning. And in the cases of Kerala, the idea of sloping roofs and narrow verandas has been used. So that is why it is very important to know about what are the various architectural elements that have been used and what have been the various vernacular styles that have been attached with the various kinds of states. Moving on with the idea of Ramsar list and World Heritage sites, there is also something called as Biosphere Reserve, where we need to learn about the biosphere reserves and the areas of terrestrial and coastal ecosystem which promote the conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of natural resources, and also the scientific research. So these three are the list, are the topics which are important from the criteria of natural or cultural heritage, to know about World Heritage sites, and then to know about the Ramsar wetlands and also the biospheres that are very important and which play a crucial role in the overall development or conservation of natural resources. Then moving on, we have the case of air conditioning cycle, perhaps from the perspective of thermal comfort that has been used in building. The idea of air conditioning system or providing HVAC services has been a very crucial and repetitive aspect nowadays. So that is why it is very important to learn the perspective of cooling and dehumidification, the expansion, evaporation, and compression of the overall working of the air conditioning system. This kind of topics holds a very specific importance in the overall human comfort or thermal comfort idea from the perspective of gate and architecture and planning exam. Moving on, we have the case of various types of arches that are present. It could be round arch, the pointed arch, horseshoe arch, and Tudor arch. There may be case of availability of various sketches of the arches, and you may be directly given the name of that particular type of arch, and you just need to mix and match the following answers, which only could be done when we learn about the various theoretical ideas of different types of arches. Then we have the case of important projects in the Indian and international context and their architects, namely. So within this perspective, you could learn the fact that Lotus Temple has been designed by Paribros Sabha, the Falling Water has been designed by F.L. Wright, and the architect of Sydney Opera House is Zone Hudson. So from this perspective, we really need to know about at least 50 of the great buildings or magnanimous buildings of the world, and particularly the architects attached to those kinds of buildings, and which also in a way improves our overall architectural knowledge. Not only we will be able to excel in various kinds of exams, but also some of the wonderful examples of the architectural or built environments help us to gain a knowledge in depth, and also it improves our thinking and overall designing skills. Moving on, we have the case of demand and supply curve, where the demand and supply curve shows the relationship between the price of goods and the quantity demanded. This could be in the perspective of land use and land microeconomics, which we discussed in the previous video. And from the perspective of the availability of land, the idea of demand and supply of various kinds of pockets of land would be discussed, and the rents or prices that are attached with the land management could be discussed under this consideration. Moving on, we have the case of important traffic interchanges that have been recently asked in a very repetitive manner. The traffic interchanges are designed to facilitate the flow of traffic between uh, different roads without the need of traffic signals. So these are the various important examples of the interchanges, supposedly the cloverleaf example, the trumpet interchange, the directional T interchange, and the diamond interchange. So based on these various kinds of interchanges, we definitely learn about how the traffic is diverted within the point of intersection without the usage of the signals. So moving on, that is all what we have from these many topics. So under this discussion, we got an idea of approximately 50 most important topics that are very, very, very important when we are going to attempt any of the exam from the architectural and planning background. Supposedly, it could be the exam of GATE, Graduate Aptitude Test in Engineering, which holds a type of paper coded encoded as AR, which is architecture and planning. There could be the exam of HPSC or other state Public Service Commission exam. HPSC is the Haryana Public Service Commission. And then there would be the case of the national level exam, which is conducted by UPSC, which is Union Public Service Commission. And various authorities could also conduct the examinations like DDA, which is the central authority under the central government, also called as the Delhi Development Authority, or the administration of various union territories to take up the exam. So there are numerous number of ways with which the vacancies are fulfilled when it comes to the overall conduct of the examinations, which are important from the perspective of architecture and planning. So I hope this video would definitely be of help for you, so that with the help of these many topics, which are very, very important from the perspective of this kind of discussion, or these kinds of examinations, these topics are very, very, very important. And once one undergoes such number of topics and have a clear idea of what the theory says about these many topics, it becomes very easy for us to strategize for different kinds of examinations. And also it becomes very easy to excel in such kind of examinations. So if you have liked the kind of discussion that we have done, please do share and like the video or overall discussion. And I would be certainly hopeful that these kinds of discussion would be definitely of help. Thank you for being a part of this very particular discussion.